Howdy, howdy, howdy. All right, we're still talking topic one. This video is going to cover the last couple points we still need to, but before we get there, I want to review what we've already covered in topic one. So again, just to remind you guys, the essential questions I have on here for you, question mark. The essential questions I have on each of these topics is essentially what we should be learning or gaining from each of these slideshows. So if you're going to study and you're like, I don't know if I've studied enough, or I don't know if I know my stuff well enough, go to the essential questions and see if you can answer these. So what is an organism? We should be able to answer that, okay? How do we know if something is alive? Again, that's something we've covered so far. Hopefully we can answer that. And if you can't, that's okay. That just means you got to go back and study a little bit more. And thirdly, what are the levels of organization in organisms? We haven't covered that one yet. So after this video, hopefully we'll be able to answer that. Okay. If you're wondering why I'm kind of whispering, everyone in my house is asleep right now, so I don't want to wake them up. Sorry if that's weird, but it is what it is. Anyway, key vocabulary. Organism. What the heck is that? Okay. Well, an organism is anything that is alive, and not just alive, but anything that can function individually. Okay. The reason we need to specifically say anything that lives and functions as an individual. The reason for that is we've already talked about it a little bit, but we've talked about how cells make up all living things. All organisms are made up of these tiny little cells that work together that create this organism. So if I chopped off a chunk of skin, okay, that skin that was chopped off, yes, it's still made up of cells. And for a time, they would be alive before they died. And those skin cells, even though they're alive, even though they're cells, we wouldn't call them an organism because they're not functioning individually. My entire body, me, I am an organism because I'm able to function individually. Okay. Moving on. Structure and function. Okay. Remember the structure is how anything is designed, how it's arranged, how it's built. Okay, we're talking about it physically. What does it look like? In function, that's your job, it's your task, it's your purpose. It's something you need to do. Okay, and we're going to see later in this video how structure and function, really they're tied together, especially in terms of biology. We're going to look at how structure really follows what job something has. The job something has is designed to be able to complete that job. Okay. Moving on here. We're going to skip past this stuff. Okay, perfect. So how do we know if something is alive? Okay. A lot of students, the first thought that pops in their head, well, if it's alive, it's got to be moving. But you got to keep in mind, trees don't move. Plants don't move, at least most of them. Venus flytrap moves, I guess. But most plants don't move, or at least they don't move quickly. I guess you could say growing is a form of movement. But really, that is not one of the 5 functions that allows us to classify if something is alive or not. The 5 functions that something needs to do to be able to classify as alive are these right here. Living organisms require energy. They respond and adapt to their environment. They reproduce, they grow, and they produce waste. Okay, so we can use these 5 functions as a way to say, yes, that thing is an organism, or that thing is not. Okay, and an example we talked about in class is a truck or a car. Okay, a car needs energy, it needs gasoline, or it will not work. A car produces waste, carbon monoxide, water as a byproduct of burning gasoline. So right away, there are 2 functions that cars do. Maybe cars are a living organism. I don't know. Well, let's have a look at the other ones. Do cars grow? They don't. A car is a car. It's not going to change its shape. Well, I guess unless it crashes into a brick wall or something. But on its own, it's not going to grow. It doesn't have cells that are going to multiply. It doesn't have cells that are physically going to grow. It's just a hunk of metal and rubber and plastic and other materials. Do cars reproduce? Do they reproduce and create offspring? Babies? No, they do not. Cars are made in a factory, and without these factories and human beings and other robots creating these cars, there would be no cars. They don't reproduce. And do cars respond and adapt to their environment? You could argue that they kind of do nowadays. Cars are technologically developed to have things like traction control, so that when you hit a patch of ice, your car automatically adjusts the speed of its wheels so that you skid less. So that is kind of responding to its environment. But really, though, if we're generous and say that, yes, cars do this, and yes, they need energy, and yes, they produce waste, that's only 3 out of 5. It doesn't have all 5 functions, and therefore, it is not an organism. It is not alive. Whereas, say, a tree. Trees need energy. They get it from the sun through photosynthesis. They do respond and adapt to their environment. A tree would grow. So there, I thought I'd show you. Trees will grow towards sunlight because they depend on sunlight. That's where they get their energy from. So this is responding to their environment. Like, look at this weird tree, right? Most trees don't grow like this, but this guy has to because there's other trees over top of it shading him. So it's going to grow towards the sunlight. Look at this diagram. This guy has the sun right over top, so he grows straight up. This guy has the sun over here, so he's going to grow towards it. So that's an example of responding and adapting to your environment. Oops, wrong slides, pardon me. There's a preview of topic 3. A tree reproduces, okay? They give off pollen, okay? Seeds are fertilized. They reproduce sexually and asexually. So sexually, there's 2 parents that combine their genes. Asexual reproduction, there's just 1 parent. Regardless, trees are reproducing, okay? They're giving off offspring. Trees also grow. Start as a seed, turn into a little sprout, and they blow up to the point where they're, big trees. And yes, they produce waste. Through photosynthesis, they absorb carbon dioxide and sunlight, and they give off oxygen and water. Okay? So a tree meets all 5 functions, and therefore we can say that it is a living organism. Okay? Really quick, I'm just going to rewind here for a second. Sorry. Just want to remind you, the words biotic. Biotic means that it is an organism. Abiotic means that it is not. Okay. Moving on here. Okay. I really enjoyed the presentations that you guys did yesterday. They were pretty darn good. I'm sorry I'm not there tomorrow, Thursday that is, to see the rest of them. I'm sure they'll be great. Look at that water bear. Look at that man. That's awesome. Look at the claws. Gross. Anyhow, so now we're going to talk about levels of organization as well as structure and function. And we've got 3 organisms here: human, squirrel, some kind of a flower. Okay. And the question is, what do they have in common? Do they have anything in common? I want you to literally pause your video and I want you to take 10 seconds and think about that. What do these 3 pretty different organisms have in common? All right. Well, the very first thing that we should think of, and we can say this for any organism, regardless of how weird it is or how different it is from other organisms, all organisms have in common the 5 functions of living organisms. We'll refer back to this page, right? Ooh, where is it? Right here. All organisms have these 5 functions in common. Sounds like a pretty good test question to me. Hint, hint, hint. Okay. But there are a lot of other things that these organisms have in common. I mean, if you look at this person and the squirrel, I mean, yeah, they both have fur or some kind of hair, right? They both have eyeballs, they've got mouths, okay? They ingest food, they eat them. They're both mammals. So the squirrel and the human have quite a bit in common. But what about the flower? Does the flower have anything in common with either of them? Well, yeah, it does. Other than the 5 functions, you have to remember that all organisms are made up of cells. Humans made of cells, all of them are made up of cells. Yes, the cells look a lot different. They're structured different, but regardless, they're all made up of cells. I'm sure you guys noticed some other things they have in common that I didn't mention, but for now, there's a lot in common between all organisms. Okay. Now, you have to keep in mind that, yes, they have all the same 5 functions necessary to survival and necessary to being alive, but they carry them out in different ways. Like I said, the 2 mammals here, they ingest their food. They chew it up, they swallow it, they digest it. Whereas this plant absorbs sunlight through photosynthesis. And they all have specialized structures. Their cells are made in a certain way so that they can perform that function of gathering energy. And we can look at this with a cow and a human being as well. We can see that the cow here has 1, 2, 3, 4 stomachs inside of it, compared to the human. Human only has 1 stomach. So what's the difference? I mean, they're both mammals. Shouldn't they both only have 1 stomach? We have to keep in mind the function of gaining energy. A cow gains its energy from eating grass, and grass is a really fibrous material. It's hard to break down and digest. So the cow needs to have 4 stomachs. It has to have this structure so that it can break down that grass and gain energy from it. If a human ate grass, you might digest a little bit of it, but I kind of doubt it. It would probably make you feel a little bit sick, and it would pass right through you, hopefully. It might actually get stuck in your colon, and you could die. Okay, don't eat grass. Okay, but our 1 stomach wouldn't have enough acid, and it wouldn't sit in there long enough to be broken down to the point where we could gain energy from it. So the structure of the cow is designed so that it can meet the function of gaining energy. Same with a human being. We only have 1 stomach because that's all we need. The food that we eat is able to be broken down by the acid in our single stomach. So our structure reflects function. You can think of inside a person's mouth, right? We've got sharp teeth. Why? Because we got to chew up the food. If our teeth weren't sharp, or if we didn't have teeth at all, we wouldn't be able to chew. Therefore, we wouldn't be able to gain energy. Therefore, we wouldn't exist. We wouldn't live and survive. And you know what? Structure reflects function, not only in organisms, but in tools as well. This knife, what's its function? What's its purpose? To cut things. So the structure reflects that. It's got to be sharp. It's got to be pointy. Same with the hammer. What's its job? To drive nails into a wall or a 2x4. It has to have enough mass, 16 ounces. It has to have a nice big flat end. If it didn't, it wouldn't be able to perform its job. So how things are designed are based on their job, based on their function. And that is especially true with organisms. Moving on. So finally, the levels of organization. What the heck are these? Okay, well, this is a pretty darn good model here, or diagram rather. And what it's showing us is that small parts combine to create other bigger parts that combine to create other bigger parts all the way up. Okay, so small all the way to big. And I'm actually going to start here at big with the organism, obviously a human being here. Okay, so this complex multicellular organism, it means it's made up of more than 1 cell. This organism is only able to survive because it has a number of different organ systems inside of it. And an organ system is made up of a number of different organs. Okay, in this organ system, this one in particular, this is your digestive system, and its main function is to break down food, digest it so that we can get energy and the nutrients we need. Okay, it's made up of your liver, your pancreas, your gallbladder, your stomach, your small and large intestine. Okay, and all these separate organs, okay, combine together to create this system. Yes, each organ has its own individual job, but those jobs work together to perform one big job, and that's getting energy and nutrients from your food. Your organs are made up of tissue, okay? A number of different types of tissue that work together to create this structure. And what is tissue? Well, tissue is made up of a bunch of cells combined together. So when you combine cells, they form tissue. And cells, that's the smallest building block of an organism. Okay, so we could actually just kind of shut the door right there, right? All of these are part of being an organism. But if you think back to our last unit, all matter is made up of particles. And that's what we have right here, atoms and molecules. And so far, we've been referring to them as particles. Okay, atoms are the smallest building block of all matter. And when you combine them together, they form molecules. And when you combine molecules together, that forms everything, all matter, including cells. When you combine cells, that forms tissue. And when you can combine tissues together, they form organs. And when you have a bunch of different organs working together for one main purpose or one main function, that's an organ system. And a number of organ systems make up an organism. Okay, so we can see how we're going from small to big. We have levels of organization. And here on this next slide, this one's a little bit more detailed. Okay, so we can see things a little bit more clearly. One drawing on here I really like is the tissue. We can see how this chunk of flesh, okay, is made up of a whole bunch of different cells all smushed together, kind of like a disgusting Lego piece, right? We have the cells combining to form tissue, tissues combining to form the organ, organs working together as an organ system, and a whole bunch of organ systems within one organism so that it can survive. Lastly, I'm not going to play it right now, but on your own time, I encourage you to watch this video. It'll help extend your knowledge and understanding of the levels of organization. Okay. Awesome, guys. I hope that covered how structure is reflected by the function. Okay. And I hope that makes sense with levels of organization. If it's not making sense, absolutely, we'll talk about it on Monday. Have a great Thursday, have a great Friday, and especially have a great weekend. I'll see you on Monday. Thanks.